Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller, and this is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, how can you identify with yourself in your life aside from your work? In my experience, you can accomplish a lot of production by just working like a slave, day in and day out, and the world and most people will applaud you for it. But as I've stepped back from being what I'd call a professional doer and giving my attention much more to being, I'm realizing my fulfillment in life at large just increases. And my connection to myself and the world and everyone keeps getting deeper. Further, I'm realizing that the lifestyles of the greatest minds that I've been looking to for guidance as of late, they don't work like slaves or define themselves by their work. They don't spend all their time working. They do far less quantity of life, but in what I am now growing much more value in, they have a lot of quality. So recently a book came across my desk about taking mini retirements. And at first glance, I saw it as a tool to help you literally do that, just kind of the how-tos, right? But if you really dig in, what I was drawn to most is how to do so. You got to face your own identity and life values. If you're not working just day in and day out and defining yourself with your daily work, that is your purpose. You do whatever your job is. I found it all really revealing to help us ask, what are we doing and why? And can we see ourselves aside from our work? So my guest and expert here is Jillian Johnsrud. Jillian is, well, she's not defined by her work. She was inspired by the idea of taking sabbatical years, and she set out to sprinkle these retirements throughout her life. So at age 40, she's taken over a dozen mini retirements. These allowed her to pursue dreams like living abroad, traveling to 27 countries, adopting 4 kids plus 2 biological kids, investing in real estate and touring the U.S. in a camper. And she did this with her husband and, as you just heard, 6 kids, and usually on less than $100,000 per year. So Jillian has taught and coached and wrote about mini retirements for almost a decade now, as she's experienced it herself. And she's now written about her experience and insight in this new book, Retire Often: How Anyone Can Take Multiple Career Breaks to Unlock Adventure, Advance Your Career, and Find Financial Freedom. Notice she said, advance your career. It's not what most people are thinking. She hosts the Retire Often podcast and is a popular speaker and consultant for many retirements, of course. She lives in Montana, where she says she spends a lot of time in her garden drinking tea. God bless her. Jillian's book, Retire Often, it's literally a manual for stepping away from your work, no matter what you do. Really, the nitty gritty ins and outs of how do I do this? How do I step away from my business or my corporate job or whatever it may be? And as you're about to hear, also addresses the philosophical questions that come into play about us and our identity. You can find Jillian at retireoften.com and, of course, the Retire Often podcast, wherever you're listening to this. Well, coming up next, Jillian Johnsrud and we discuss these mini retirements and coming to light with our true values in and for life. Let's evolve ourselves today. Jillian, when I first got your book and saw the topic, I honestly was a little skeptical. And I thought, okay, here's somebody with some high profile, big money job, and they can stockpile money and take off anytime they want to. And I just didn't really think about it. It was sitting there in a pile of books. And then you sent this, a journal, customized journal with my name on it. And I couldn't ignore that, for one. But then as I got into your book and saw, oh no, that's not the concept. This is somebody who has 6 kids. Adopted kids, biological kids. They're up in Montana in the mountains. This is not you're not doing this from a high rise in Manhattan or whatever. And you sending that, I just want to say thank you, one. And two, it so depicts what I have experienced of you in reading the book of doing things out of the box. I get so many books. I probably average 1 or 2 a day. Rarely is it anything beyond the book. So, thank you. And I think it's a good testimony to everybody. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad you liked the gift. I was so excited making them. I found a local person. I don't know if you've ever made like swag things. Sometimes it's hard to find things that are like unique and custom and like that you really like. And I found someone locally and I was so excited about it.
It's, well, again, so a friend, John Rulin, he wrote a book called Giftology, and he actually passed away a year ago or so. And a big part of of what he was about is gifting people.
Yeah.
But he said, don't gift it with like this. Here's the journal. Well, the front of it says Kevin Miller with a mountain. I mean, it's great as opposed to just your brand, or your name, which is what we usually do. I've gotten t-shirts before and it's got somebody's brand and I don't even know them. And I'm not going to go just promote them. So again, thank you. And what I thought was thinking of as I first was digging into the book, and that's a good reminder of, is just disruption. It's been a term that's on my mind a lot right now. And I feel like you, with the concepts in this book, they are, in a good way, disrupting to the norm and the average, which I think is the opportunity, but probably also the challenge that you face with this concept is it's just so disrupting to the norm. So to get people past that is maybe the first effort.
For sure. Yeah, I think people like the concept. Like, who doesn't like, if I say like, would you want a month-long vacation? They're like, yeah, that sounds nice. I could use that. But then there's the yeah, but that starts to bubble up. Yeah, but, and we all have our own yeah, buts of like why we don't think this can work for us.
Okay, you just said a month-long vacation. I found myself, and you mentioned this a lot in the book, but I found myself playing with that the idea of, somebody brought to my attention years ago how often we on a day-to-day basis look for relief. Come in, kick the shoes off, sit down, have a beverage, whatever. It's relief. It's great. I mean, who doesn't like that? But it's not necessarily renewal or restoration. We don't get up from the couch and a bag of chips watching a ball game and go, oh man, I feel great and refreshed. That's not it. And I thought with your concept here of mini retirement, and of course the other words that come along with that. And for me, it was thinking about sabbatical. I thought, so different than vacation. How many times do we go on a vacation and we're worn out? We need a vacation from the vacation. And it's entertainment and it's great and memorable and whatever. But I see what you're talking about as more of a renewal.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah. There is something, when I created the definition myself of a mini retirement, but I said it's a month or longer. And the reason it's different than a week-long vacation or a 2-week vacation is I find there's something that happens like in our nervous system, like psychologically around that 2, 3, 4-week period. It's like a settling in, like we more deeply relax, we disconnect, we start that rejuvenation process. But it takes a while to get there, to really disconnect from work and emails and projects and things that have to get done around the house, and be more present in our body, more present with our surroundings, more present with the people we love. It's not an instant process like the moment we step out of the office.
Okay, so play with another analogy with me. We've played with this for years, and again, I found myself reminded of the concept of, every day we plug our phone in, recharge it. The phone's dead, and you recharge it overnight. The next morning, you've got battery, recharge it. Different than the operating system upgrade, where you got to shut everything down and then come back. The idea of new and better, and thought about that. So as you have over the past, if I got the numbers right, 20 years or so, taking 12 or so of these mini retirements, that it wasn't just to recharge, it was to come back. Do you find that like a different operating system? You come back, Jillian comes back, changed. You had an experience during that time, not just a vacation, not just time off, but you experienced something and you come back different and viably better.
Yeah, you create space. And I don't know if you like to garden. I love gardening. But if you have a garden box and you pull a bunch of stuff out and you create space, something new will grow there. Now you can intentionally plant something new, or random seeds will pop up and weeds will grow. But if you create space, it will get filled with something. And mini retirements are about creating space. And the goal of my book is that you very intentionally fill that space, fill it with growth, with healing, with restoring yourself, with time with people you love, with learning new things, self-improvement, rest, recovery, whatever that looks like. But it's hard to, our lives are full. We're at 100%. Whatever our week is, it's 100% full. And if we want to add something big in, whether that's learning or growth or an amazing experience, like you're going to have to create a little bit of space for that to happen and to really thrive.
Okay, this may just be the show of analogies because you keep the gardening thing. This literally came up, Jillian, in a conversation with a group of people a few months back. And I was questioning kind of the personal development, self-help concept. I think we can feel like we're just adding, we're getting more information, we're adding something on it, adding something on and adding something. And I was realizing through some transitions in my own life I feel like I'm more so, at least in the season, getting rid of things. And we came up with the garden analogy of if we all have a plot of land. It's a concept that I help myself with. We all have a little plot. It's our garden. And what if we just, for the sake of the practice, say, you can't make your garden bigger. It's just going to be that. So it can be chock full and overflowing.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want that. I want the kind of the Zen garden these days with space in between and really rich whatever in this corner and really rich over here, but space as opposed to my life, which historically before was as much as I could, break the barriers open, grow it as tall as you can. Does that relate to what you're looking at here?
Yeah, absolutely. There are constraints. There are limitations. I think about it like a 4x4 garden box. Like that's the amount of space we get. And for a lot of us, the work plant is a big plant. It takes up a lot of light, a lot of moisture, like a lot of soil. And there's other plants in there that are important, whether it's our kids or our extended family or our health. But there's a capacity of how big those can get in a confined space. So the idea of a mini retirement is what if we pull that plant, that big work plant out for a period of time and give these other things, our health, our kids, our other relationships, a little bit more light, a little bit more room so they can thrive in this short season, whether it's a month or a year. And then we can thoughtfully put that work plant back in there. But you're right. You can't just keep adding more and more and more. There are practical constraints on our time and our energy and our focus and our capacity.
Okay, I'm going to hit back on disruption. As I was reading, what came to mind, and I wrote down in my notes here, is this concept. It feels like to me disrupts our identity, disrupts, and I'm using disruption in a good way.
Yeah.
Our purpose, our work, and our money. And that leads to why I ultimately was attracted to having you on the show to talk about. This is a mind shift. Again, disruption, or it's just so counter to how we live. And I looked at it and I'm thinking, this is kind of a mindset exercise to go through the concept for me to really think about, I'm really going to stop my work and take time off. I mean, my work is, let's start there. My work is what I, of course, quote, do. What do you do? And it's your work role. And you're going to have me stop that, even if to put it on pause for a month, much less to go further than that seems like we can get a little insecure around that. Is that a primary topic as you share this that you find yourself dealing with people?
100%. And it's one of the reasons I like mini retirements versus maybe full retirement or early retirement is that work is a really useful container. It's a useful container for our identity and our purpose. It gives us structure. It gives us meaning, gives us a sense of accomplishment, a sense of self-esteem. Like it holds a lot of good things that are tricky to replace if you retire at 35 and never work again. It takes a lot of effort to replace those things. But it's important that we practice. It's important that it doesn't hold 100% of our purpose and our identity and our self-esteem, partly because of our resilience and partly because unless you die at your desk, at some point you have to figure this out. So you can either practice in mini retirements, other places to have purpose, other places to feel useful, other places to create self-esteem, or just hope that you die mid-shift and never have to learn the lesson. But mini retirements are a great practice round of how can I build and cultivate these things in other areas of my life so I'm not entirely dependent on my work. Because that's why people have a crisis when they get laid off, when they become disabled, when they end up having to retire because of health reasons, and they can't do the thing that was the container that held 100% of this for them.
Okay. I had this discussion, I think yesterday with someone. It was with a group call yesterday, and we were talking about being versus
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah.
And there was some sharing around the idea of, well, you could take fitness, just feeling well.
Mhm.
Let's say that you've never lived that life, and but somebody over here, they're trying to sell you on health and wellness. But if you've never experienced how it feels, it may be hard to sell because you don't really understand the benefits. So we were kind of comparing that to the idea of being and the fulfillment and the peace that we're experiencing. But I hadn't before. And I think in years past, I don't know if you could have sold it to me because I was what I do. That was my high. That was my drug. And so in this, do you feel that something you've had this experience continually of taking that big work plan out and experiencing something. But for those of us, if we haven't done that, we've never experienced it. It's hard to communicate the value. Yeah.
It's an enormous leap of faith because you don't know something until you know it. Like it's hard to know something until you're in it. And it's one of the reasons I encourage people if you have all these fears, if you have all these doubts, if you have all these concerns, start with a month. Just experiment with something that's low risk, low cost, because once you experience it and once you know that in your body of the benefit to you personally, then you can come back and do bigger things with your finances or do bigger things with your profession so that you can do this again and again in more and more meaningful ways. But I never try to sell people on the idea of like, take a whole year off. Like that's such a high cost for something that you really don't have confidence in. Confidence and clarity come in doing. You got to do the thing. And so take that little leap of faith of, because most people are like, maybe a month. Like, yeah, we could do a big road trip with the kids, or like I could get caught up on a house project that's been driving us crazy. You can kind of visualize that at least a little bit and some of those benefits.
I envisioned people having issues around explaining it to others.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, you're going to go and the main question of why? What have you found, not just for you, but the people that you're
Mhm.
working with? Seems like an odd question to me, but it feels relevant to almost to help. Like, help me come up with my whys. Well, let me do it justice. Page 47 of your book, actually, and you talk. I loved you talking about identity, and you said you and your husband Adam, right? Ask yourselves these questions. What were all the things we wanted to be core to our identity? What would we want others to know about us? What kinds of words would we use to introduce ourselves? How would we want others to introduce us? Absolutely love those. I will probably, as my kids all descend tomorrow, find time over the holiday to talk about that. But that to me goes in line with being able to explain why
Mhm.
you're doing this. So speak to that, if you would.
Yeah, it's an exercise that I've done usually around the new year, so that's good timing. But over the years of words to describe our identity, our activities, and possessions, because those are the three things. If you're curious about what should be a priority, what am I not quite hitting the mark from my ideal to reality? If you focus on those words, you can kind of see maybe the purpose of a mini retirement. For me, I would say like I'm a tango dancer and I'm a gardener and I'm a writer and I'm a traveler and I'm a reader. And then I can look at my actual schedule and go, is that stacking up? Like, is there actual space in the garden for those things that I either do identify with or aspirations that I identify with? Like, I always wanted to be, a tour guide or something, but it's never actually happened in my life. And a mini retirement's a great, I think about it like a Swiss Army knife. It's one thing that can fulfill a lot of different purposes. And so if you have this identity that you're like, I view myself as like a fit person, but you're like, actually, that's not shaken out in my daily life right now in this season. A mini retirement's a great opportunity to kind of realign with who you see yourself as or who you want to see yourself as.
Okay, let's go right there. Again, I love the analogies. I like mind games. I like that idea of going, okay, if you wake up tomorrow and there's, $10 million in your bank account, now how would you make the decision here or there? And what I really experience is a lot of folks, that's scary, really
Yeah.
scary to think, okay, if that really happened, what would you do? And to put your mind. So I like the idea. Okay. So in that sense too, to say, okay, I'm going to take a month. Let's just go with the month. I'm going to take the month off, and you're going to wake up that morning and you don't have to go to work. And I don't think that most people, at least those who are listening to this show, would be the kind that would just, binge Netflix nonstop. And you'd get bored. So go ahead and, eat, drink, be merry for a couple of days. And I think you'd get bored of it. And now what? And wondering if there is an underlying fear in thinking about that of, holy crap, I'm gonna have to look in the mirror, not be busy, not have all that stuff that I have to do. And it's just me and holy smokes, I don't, uh, talk about disrupting and
Yeah.
maybe fearful. Have you found that?
There is, work can be an amazing distraction, like a really meaningful, enjoyable, rewarding distraction. And I find some people, especially in like their 30s, 40s, sometimes early 50s, get to this point where they've been outrunning an avalanche and they've just been running faster and faster and faster. And it's been good for them. Like they've received the rewards of outrunning this avalanche. And maybe that avalanche is like childhood trauma. Maybe that avalanche is lack of purpose, lack of identity, lack of self-esteem, like conflicts in their relationships. And they've just poured all of that energy into their work. And it's been a great distraction, a profitable distraction. But then there comes a point, outrunning an avalanche works until it doesn't. And it doesn't real quick. And some people hit that point where that thing that was working one day doesn't work. And now you have to confront all of that thing that you were running from, but while you're buried underneath it, which, it's a midlife crisis, it's a health issue. Sometimes that stuff just comes out in our body. Like it's, relationships that break down. And so a mini retirement, one of the, one of the like warnings, hazard of a mini retirement is that you now have time. I talk about in the last section of the book, the messy kitchen. It's like when you go to work, late night, make dinner, kitchen's messy. You're like, oh, whatever. We're gonna go to bed. We'll deal with it in the morning. In the morning, you're getting the kids out of the house and you're really busy and you just head out to work and you just leave the messy kitchen. And it's not bad because you're at work all day. So you don't have to look at the messy kitchen. A mini retirement can be you're just hanging out in your kitchen and the kitchen's messy. And it doesn't create the problem, but it gives you the opportunity to notice it and to feel it and to sit in it. But it also gives you the opportunity to resolve it. Now you have the time and the space and the bandwidth to clean the kitchen and really up level these parts of your life that felt maybe too hard or complicated to improve before.
I saw a Jerry Seinfeld skit that somebody shared with me on the concept that you just talked about, where he was kind of depicting the Jerry Seinfeld, the guy who's partying at night. And he's going to party and have a little bit too much and stay up too late. And somebody might ask, hey, what about work and responsibilities tomorrow? And he said, I'm paraphrasing. He says, oh, that's tomorrow Jerry's problem.
Yeah.
This is now Jerry. That's tomorrow Jerry's problem. And putting that off, I like that concept. I wrote it down, work as a distraction. So how does this align? Oh, I think it does. So I've gotten to the age now where I have peers, and I got involved with a group of, I call them my adventure guys. And they came out of a friend who's a wealth manager. So by proxy, a lot of these guys have a lot of money. And what I started seeing, and then I actually had some other folks, I had a client come to me, and I tend to hang out with guys as a guy, and these guys made money before retirement age to the point to where they didn't really have to work anymore. And they didn't know what to do. Their purpose was gone. Now that I had one, again, he's a client, and you know who you are if you're listening. And he said, yeah, I made triple the amount of money I thought I ever would. And I'm at this age and I don't have to. So I don't have to go into work. I don't have to keep doing that. That was my purpose. It was providing for my family. Now that that's off the table, I don't know what to do. And so I'm seeing this, and I can hear a lot of people going, oh, great problem to have. They don't need money. But if you're not fulfilled, and so some of them have just gone back to work. I have a friend right now, and he literally sold a company that he had built, doesn't have to work again. And he is now contemplating just going back and doing the same thing just because he just doesn't know what else to do. So again, coming back and figuring out these questions of what am I doing and why? If it's only for the money, if we take that off the table again, so back to the retirement, what on earth would I do? Which goes into the very first, let me scroll down to the contents here, the very first, from dreams to plans.
Yeah.
And do you find that with a lot of people, that initial point of what would I do is pretty mind blowing? Or is there confusion sometimes? Or maybe it's a percentage. Maybe some of them go, oh my gosh, I know exactly. I've been waiting. I've been dreaming of doing this. I don't know if that's a percentage to cite, or tell me about it.
I would say it's pretty evenly divided between the first three steps in the book. The first step is like, what would you do? And 2/3 of people are like, I've got it locked and loaded. I'm going to do this trip. I have this thing. I want to do this thing with my kids. I would love to train for a marathon. Like that one, they've got figured out. Some people, it's the job. There's no way I could leave my job. There's no way I could take a month off. It doesn't work in my career. It doesn't work in my profession. Like I would get fired. It would ruin everything. Like that's their, yeah, but. And for some people, it's the money. It's usually one of those three things though, that people go, yeah, cool. But what would I do? Or how would I work that out with my boss? Or how could I even afford that? But the reality is all three of those, if you can sort them out, you come out better on the other end. Whatever that challenge is, if you can figure out the logistics, you end up, not only do you get a mini retirement, which is amazing, but you end up better. I kind of joke that the true cost of a mini retirement is that it's emotionally fraught and it's logistically challenging. Like that's the price of admission. And the reason it's emotionally fraught or logistically challenging is different for each person. Everyone has their own yeah, but.
Well, to that point, your book, Retire Often, which for those watching is over my shoulder here, you really do go through these conceptual quandaries and questions. You also go through the minutia of literally how to, okay, here's how you do it. Here's how you've done it. Here's how you've done it as you work with people. And I admittedly am well known as a concept guy. So we may not get into the nitty gritty of the hows, but you address those. Okay, so how do you figure out what you would do, what you would desire to do? And you've got kind of your step-by-step to do that. How would you deal with work? Okay, these are some ideas and that have worked. How do you deal with money? And I want to point out, I have a friend and he and his wife, she works 1 week out of the month. Mm-hmm. And the rest they play with their kids. Yeah, now she's also a very high-end doc. And so I can see that. I've known other people, he's a corporate lawyer and they're going to go in and work 1 week and make 50 grand. Okay. Most people aren't that. And I appreciated that. I don't perceive that has been you and your husband necessarily, that you're not doing dramatically high paying jobs. So I wanted to put that out there. So as we look at the finances, you're coming to it from a perspective of, again, not stupid money, when you're working. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. No, even combined income, we never made it $100,000 a year. And I encourage people, there's a mini retirement for every budget. And if you're earlier in your financial journey, unload the affordable ones. It doesn't have to be super expensive to be really meaningful. Like last year, I took a month off and I learned tango for a month. I gave myself $1,000 budget and I spent all month learning tango. And in my mind, that was a capital investment, just like a business would make into my future self. When I future projected me out at 80, I had met this 80-year-old at tango and he was like the most gregarious, fun, social. He had all these amazing relationships. Everyone loved him. He was so fit. He knew all of these dances, like so agile, had this amazing social life. And I was like, I don't just want to be like him when I'm 80. He's outpacing me now in every facet of life. He's going so much harder than I am. And I was like, yes, I want to learn tango because my 80-year-old self would really appreciate that. Like it's a hobby that will be mentally, physically, socially good for me for the next 4 decades. And it was worth a month and $1,000.
Okay, I want to ask on that. So we look at that and could easily say, I'm trying to think how to describe it, that you got to learn tango. You got to
Mhm.
learn something that was fun. And we look at it that you got to learn tango. My bet is that I'm looking for an analogy again. I have a son who had epilepsy. One of his therapies was a trampoline, jumping on a trampoline to work a
Yeah.
section of the brain that they wanted to. It wasn't for him learning how to do flips, which he did. So we got a trampoline, big trampoline, and he's learning to do this stuff. But that wasn't the point. The point was the work in his brain. So I'll ask you that. So you spent a month going and participating with a group. The group was made up of a certain demographic and style of people, I would imagine, who had maybe more creative outlets than the norm of a group that you may be with, more creative or more outgoing, or I don't know, da da da. And so you learn tango, but I'm betting that the Jillian who exists now as a result of that, there's a lot more benefit that happened up here in your head and in your heart.
100%. I mean, you're right. There's things that are on the surface, like I developed a skill set, but in each skill set, like you have to change, you have to grow
Yeah.
to create that skill set. And one of them for me was tango's very, very subtle. You have to be entirely present in your body, your whole body. Your brain cannot be off solving world problems, or else you will instantly, like the feedback loop is so small, we will instant be lost and confused. And for me, my brain is a butter churn all the time. It churns and churns and churns and churns and churns and churns. And so for me to have an activity that I had to be entirely present in my body and entirely present with the person, the human standing right in front of me in very close proximity, was such a good mindfulness practice. It was such a good almost meditation practice that I, for 2 or 3 hours had to live in this whole different modality that alone has been so helpful for me in my mental health and in my well-being and just feeling more holistic as a human being.
I thank you for reminding me of that. I tend to, if we look at like outdoor activities, I do trail runs and mountain bike stuff, and I can careen down a mountain at high speed, but I'm really used to it. But in the past couple of years, as I went surfing in Mexico for the first time or paddleboarding on a river, I was not thinking of anything. I was not in flow state even. I was totally immersed in the moment because I was an idiot and didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Uh, you, I got a question for you. I'm going to say it's around achievements, how this process has shaped you. Here's my example is as I have really been on a path of being and not just the doing, Kevin, the being. Kind of tongue in cheek, said, it's not my goal to be some monk on a mountain sitting in the lotus position all day saying, I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm done. It kind of feels a little boring, but there's some aspect to it that the more I be, I realize I'm looking towards the new year. I don't feel super motivated to have a bunch of goals of achievements and doings. Again, where I'm at in life, this is not a philosophy for everybody or that I'm espousing, but for me, I'm looking and going, maybe my goal will be to have no goals. I'm kind of,
Yeah.
again, just playing with it. Of course, I'll be doing things and whatnot, but doing that in this process, has it gotten you to looking at or valuing achievements differently?
I think especially at first. I think your first mini retirement, your second, your third, the focus is so much on disconnecting from work. And like you were talking about, who am I outside of this thing that holds so much of my identity and productivity and like output? And it kind of, I think for a lot of people, those first couple are, who am I in my own skin? Can I just exist while walking on a trail? Can I just exist while hanging out with my family? Can I be more present where I am in the moment? And for a lot of us, that's a big learning curve. It's an important learning curve. So I find that tends to be the first couple. But like I said, a mini retirement's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. It can fulfill a lot of different purposes. So my last one, actually, I've been doing this. I've been writing online and doing creative work for a decade now, a long time, and I love it. But it's like one modality of what I can do, and I wanted to take a month and try to build an entirely different company. Like, is there something that could hold other interests, other skill sets? Like, could I diversify how I spend my time? And so it was, but there again, for me, I run my own company and it's full. Like my day is full, my life is full. And so I still have to carve out, intentionally shut that part down, take that plant out of the garden. So I had space to, let this new plant grow a little bit. And that's really interesting and fulfilling. Um, and so I think it's, it's part of the reason, like in the first part of the book, a lot of the focus is not just what's important to you, but what is it that you need right now in this season of life? What's the thing that's applicable right now and it's important to you? Like, can we get both of those things? Because I'm not saying, plan out a bucket list of 80 different things spanning your whole life, but how can we plan your next mini retirement? Like, let's just focus on the one in front of us first.
I really appreciate that, Jillian. What's important right now? Um, I like the concept and I think not real consciously been playing with seasons and
Yeah.
allowing myself, like even that, of
Yeah.
saying I'm in this place of being. So am I just going to continue on Kevin's being journey and do and do and do less? Right now, I kind of feel like that. But then what if next year, it wasn't that many years ago, and I thought I was a former pro cyclist, and I thought I might go for a national championship again. As I get
Yeah.
older, there's less people to compete with, and maybe I'll do that. And right now, I think I don't really care to devote myself. But if I go through a season of being, what if I prepare myself and realize I want to do a season of, like tango, but I want to start training and see what I can do again, and just allowing myself. Yeah, we're in this culture, it feels like, of constant momentum,
Yeah.
inertia building, growing. Well, from a doing standpoint, from a work standpoint, and if we take that or don't put as much weight on it, well, I guess part of the question is, are we evolving as ourselves? We're back to the, psychologically, spiritually, are we evolving there? And I would say it's hard to if you've got the constant distraction of the grind per se. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's seasons of life. Like I say, I'm a gardener and I live in Montana, so we have very distinct
Yeah.
seasons.
Yeah.
And each one has a purpose. And I don't think any of them are more important than the other. But for me, allowing myself to lean in to whatever season I'm in and knowing it's just a season. And the next season will be different. This spring is a season of planting and planning and new things and addition. And the summer is a season of growing, bringing things to maturity. And the fall is a season of cleanup and closing things down. And the winter is a season of rest. And all of those are so, I think, beneficial for nature and beneficial for us as humans. And just saying, like, maybe you've been in that summer growing season for a long time. Maybe it's been years, 10 years, 15 years, and you've just been growing and growing and growing and growing. And you haven't done that fall season of like, let's prune stuff back. Let's
Yeah.
pull stuff out. Or that winter season of like, let's just let it sit. Let's just let it rest for a while before we move into that spring season of like, what's something new we could plant? What's something new we can grow? Like, how could we rearrange this? How could we plan this? Like that season of vision and motivation and optimism. All of them, for me, all of them are really enjoyable. They're really beautiful and they create so much meaning and pleasure for me in my life to move through all 4 of those seasons over and over and over again. I'm glad I'm not stuck in just one season for decades at a time.
I love the analogy again, gardening. So maybe I'm in a season of letting some of my ground just lie there, fallow
Yeah.
and regenerate. And gosh, I'm thinking of my grandfather was a farmer, and back before the electricity, he was a farmer, and the seasons there, the workload was not the same. You harvest like mad in the summer, and in the winter when it's butt cold up in Ohio, and the days are shorter, they just did less. But we don't do that. Gosh, it's kind of the idea around one of the ideas around allergies in our diet, that it used to be that we had with gardening. You have blueberries for a season, and then that season's over, and then you have potatoes, and then that season's over, and then you have whatever. And of course today we can all just go down to the store and have blueberries every single day. And there's some questions about that help having causation to allergies that it starts to bother us. We weren't built to do the same eat the same thing every day, and yet that's how we tend to do. I didn't think about it with work, that we have gotten to the place of this is how we do the day and do work. Well, you go through that, we go to school, we then get training, then we go work, and it just doesn't end. And that's kind of the trajectory of life, that we don't have seasons. So that'd be a question. How are we suffering then from the lack of seasons in our lives? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that summer season works out great. That harvest season works out great for corporations. Like they're really designed to optimize of like, we're just going to grow and grow and grow and get it bigger and bigger and harvest and like just sprint. And I encourage people, okay, so that's the economic landscape. I'm probably not going to single-handedly change that, but how do we as humans respect that we weren't designed for corporate profit? Like that's not how we were put together. So I can do that sprint season. I can do that harvesting season where you're 16 hours a day, and I can lean into it, and that can be fun for a season. And then I can take a mini retirement and I can do other stuff. I can focus on my health. I can rest. I can spend time with people I love. I can grow personally, not just professionally. And then I can pivot back. There are companies and cultures that are very sprint. They just want you to sprint all the time.
Yeah.
And, HIIT training is cool, but it's sprint and then rest. You sprint and then walk. You sprint and then walk. You don't just sprint 4 years. Like we're capable of sprinting, which is so cool. We're capable of doing really hard things. We have this huge capacity to suffer, which is amazing. But it's not supposed to be all that all the time. Like we're supposed to pivot back and forth. And I think honoring that, and just because corporate culture says, no, we're going to sprint, you can go, okay, I'll sprint. That's cool. I like that. That'll be fun. And then I'll do 3 years. I'll do 5 years. I'll let you burn through all of my human capital until I'm crispy, fried, have nothing left to give. And then I'm going to take some time off, and I'm going to refresh. I'm going to regrow some stuff. I'm going to focus on the aspects of my life that I had to give up to do your sprint. And then I'm going to jump into the next job when I feel 100% again. And we can decide that we can do what's good for corporations, but we can also squeeze in what's good for us.
Jillian, you just described a lot of my story, and a lot of why, we're talking about this today. I have a friend, Steve Smith is his name. I'll mention it because he's going to be on the show soon with a new book. he has run a soul care institute for many
Mm,
years called Potter's Inn. And they talk about, you said the sprint, they talk about the whitewater and that you
yeah.
just you can't be in the whitewater all the time. You got to have some calm waters as well. I literally argued with him, and at least I thought I was the exception in my
Yeah.
arrogance and ignorance
Yeah.
not too many years ago. And it was me arguing, saying that's why I exercise like I do, why I eat, why I uh, relationships and purpose. And I have all these things, and I'm equipping myself so that I can be in the whitewater all the time, which with businesses and 9 kids and all the things that I'm doing, it kind of required. And I did it
Yeah.
until I couldn't,
Yeah.
until I realized I'm bitter. I'm bitter. This is not, and for me, it came out of bitterness. It could have come out as for somebody else as a heart attack or a divorce or whatever. It's going to manifest itself in some way. Yeah. Thank you for the sprint thing. But we live in a culture, and that's what we think we can do. We think we can live in a sprint, and I think we do it until we can't. Yeah.
Yeah. And I try to lean into that and to appreciate that my body can do that, appreciate that that's rewarded in the economy, appreciate that for all the good it is. I'm not a person that, like I said, you don't have to be necessarily on a mountain in a Zen position all day long for the rest of your life, but maybe you need that for a day. Maybe you need that for a week or a month. And then maybe you can do the sprint again. There's such beauty in the seasons of life and our capacity to pivot between all of them. And my hope with the book is just creating a framework of logistically, how do we pull this off? How do we do this in our careers and in our money? And how do we plan for it? Because I think the concept of leaning into those seasons of life, is really useful for everyone, no matter which season you prefer. Maybe your summer season is like 80% of your year and the other seasons are real short. And that might work great for a long time, and then you might hit an age where you're like, actually, I really want that fall winter season maybe we should do that for like a full year.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me ask you. I had that thought too, Jillian. Is there the possibility of somebody who's doing the grind? They're
Mhm.
doing the grind and they're doing the grind, and to look at this and to have a conscious or even subconscious fear of, if I stop and go and take this month off, what if it is so glorious that I dread more than ever going back?
Surprisingly, a high percentage of the population has that exact fear.
Mm,
That it's kind of like it's better to stay in prison than to escape and taste like the joy of life and then
yeah.
have to get dragged back into prison. Like I would rather just stay in the suffering because then at least I don't have that contrast of how good it could be. Um, and there's some truth to it, especially in things less than a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I had a client who had been working super hard for a long time and took, I think, a 10-day vacation, and then came back and had like a panic attack at work, like melted down. Because there is something, I think, just in our nervous system where it starts to be like, oh, wait, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever done like fasting. When you're fasting, you start to get less and less hungry. Like the purpose of that is to help you go out and find food. Like you can't just like lay down and die when you're fasting. Like you need to be able to keep trying to find food. And you won't be overwhelmingly hungry. You'll be hungry enough where you're motivated, but not to where like it shuts you down. But as soon as your body realizes, oh, we have access to food now, cool, we're actually super hungry. We didn't let you in on that joke, but we're super hungry. And you stay hungry until your body feels like rejuvenated. And it's the same with burnout and fatigue. You might be super burned out, but your body only lets you know you're a little burned out so it can get you out of that spot it doesn't want you to stay in. It's
Mm.
trying to it's like you're kind of in danger. I'm going to let you know it's a little dangerous, but I'm going to make sure you have enough energy to get out of the situation. But as soon as your body realizes it has access to rest, it goes, oh, actually, we're super tired. We didn't want to let you know before because you needed to keep going, but we're super tired. And it will stay tired until it is fully rested. Which is why I think giving yourself at least a month, because it gives you that ability. I find 2 or 3 months, if you know you're burned out, usually people start to feel like they've caught their breath. Their heads above water. If you have the ability to do the most ideal thing, my rule of thumb is a month for every year that you've pushed really hard without a break. So if you've had a decade of just that sprinting, if you've been sprinting for a decade, maybe give yourself 10 months if you can. I find that is a good starting point. If you've been sprinting, I know people who started working real hard when they were 15, and then they worked all through college and they went to med school and they did their residency and they became doctors. And now they're 35 and they haven't had hardly 2 days off in a row for 20 years. It might take some time to like fully recover.
Well, it brings up the issue too that you speak to in the book. My dad, Dan Miller, wrote the book 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. Sold a couple million copies of that. So work you love. I mean, that's been a focus of my life. And you mentioned prison, if it's like going back to prison. I would think that also gives the opportunity and maybe necessity to question what you're doing and why does it feel like prison. If that's can we say that if that's a fear that if I step away, I'm going to enjoy the time away from this prison so much, it's going to be even harder to go back. Probably a good time. Maybe that month off is to figure out what you might want to do other than that prison sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I think there's two sides of a spectrum. There's people who have a high capacity to suffer, which is so useful. Like I'm never going to disparage that. I was a person, my childhood taught me to have a high capacity to suffer, and it served me really well. But the other end of that spectrum is the courage to change. And I find the people who tend to be the happiest in life are the ones who can access both of those. They have the capacity to suffer, they can do hard things. And they also have the courage to change when they realize, hey, maybe my body was right. This isn't a spot I should stay in. This isn't great for me. They can start to hatch that long-term escape plan. They can start to reconsider, maybe they're going to stay there another 6 months. Maybe they'll stay there another 2 years, but they're like, this isn't my home forever. And they can develop that courage to change. And oftentimes you're right. The only way you can really get that perspective, like I said, clarity and confidence come in doing. If you need clarity and confidence that it's time to make a change, go experience that change for a while, do that change for a while, and then you can come back and have the motivation to make bigger life changes.
I like that. As you're thinking or you're talking, I was thinking that kind of this going back to the sprint, going back to the whitewater that I was addicted to and believing in. I thought I was valiant and righteous man, I know in the past, and I hadn't conceptualized it for myself, but we look back for those who know the Bible and the story of, Jesus, and he was the one who would go away on his own, go away, for 30 days or take the disciples away. And I know a group of guys and we were thinking, okay, in truth, if I'm Jesus, I'd probably be, if I was a disciple thinking like, dude, seriously, you got like 3 years to work here and the world's going to hell in a handbasket. We don't have time. We need to get some Red Bull and stay up and pull some all-nighters. You're saying go away. And reading your book, I thought about that again because it had been pointed out to me once and I actually looked it up. So according to somebody who told me and to the internet, I didn't talk to her personally, but Mother Teresa, same thing. She was renowned she would work 6 days and take a day off. She would work 3 weeks and take a week off. She would work 11 months and take a month off and so on and so forth. So again, you look at a picture of Mother Teresa, she's out here on the streets with the people at the worst suffering. How could she afford, how selfish, luxurious is how I would have looked at it, to step away. There's no time, man. Yeah. You get some amphetamines going and you just stay up. And I thought, I'm doing that. And what I ultimately came to, Jillian, is, oh, so I'm God. I am that important that the world's going to fall apart without me. And as a dad of 9 kids and a big home and all this stuff and a business owner, I could make a case for that. And yet I look at it and go, man, if I die, everybody's going to be okay. The world will still go on. And I saw that recently with my father, who got a diagnosis, and 6 weeks later he was gone. And was there a void? Sure. But everybody went on, and kind of questioning that. It seems like a good time to question. Yeah. We're back to identity and our perspective. Well, as you say in the book, we're looking at our values. Where are we? Yeah.
And I try to flip the script for high performers, because there can be that like let's just drink some Red Bull and keep going mentality. But I compare it to if you're a sports person, but like if you're a sprinter, if you do the 400-meter dash and you go away and you do something for a month and you come back and you're 10% faster than everyone else, you don't win 10% more races. If you're 10% faster than everyone, you win all the races. And there are some tasks, there are some jobs where being the best matters. It's economically advantageous. It matters in your career. It matters in the outcome. Being the best matters. And if you care about being the best, why would you run on 80%? Why would you show up as a mediocre version of yourself? Why wouldn't you bring the best version of yourself? Like, I played sports in high school, and we never did our hardest training the morning of a game. Because why would we show up tired? If we care about the game, if the outcome matters, why would we not show up as our best self? And there are things, especially as an entrepreneur, there are challenges. I have a high capacity server, but there are challenges where like my best self maybe can do this. My 60% self is going to fail. And if I want to win, if I want to succeed, I should be a little thoughtful. Don't be stupid. Like show up, like do the things to show up as your best self if the outcomes really matter.
I am thinking about cycling. That's my background. And, the Tour de France, which I did not do, but in there it's, 21 days, and they race. When they are not on the bike, it is 100% focused on recovery, every single thing that they can do. And when the tour's over, those guys don't jump back into another race for a while, especially not a multi-day stage race. They are going to recover for a long time. And I've known marathoners who they focus on a couple marathons for the year, maybe 2. That's it. And they say, if I'm going to be, like what you said, if I'm going to be the absolute best, I can't be doing this every month. I've got to build up, and then boom. I think Mark Allen, the old triathlete who won the Ironman, I think that was kind of one of his things. He didn't do a lot of other races. He built up, and then he won the ultimate, and he was the best. We don't live like that. We live like, as opposed to a racehorse, we kind of live like mules.
Yeah. And there's some hubris, like your idea of like, I can just be in the whitewater all the time. Like I'm the exception to that rule. But when you look at other facets of how our human bodies work, whether it's cycling or whatever, that's idiotic. And it's an idiotic mentality to say to someone who's doing the Tour de France, well, when you're not cycling, why aren't you lifting weights? Don't you know lifting weights is great? Isn't that good for you? And they're like, no, actually, I care about my performance. So like, I'm not going to do the thing that doesn't work. And if you're working really hard and if you're doing difficult things and if the outcomes matter, optimize for your best performance. That includes rest. It includes physical, mental, emotional rest. And so I think, sometimes some people have this idea of like mini retirements. Well, if I took a break from my work, wouldn't people think I'm lazy? Wouldn't they think I'm weak? Wouldn't they think I'm not dedicated? Wouldn't they think I don't care about my profession? And I'm like, I don't know. In high school, when I was playing basketball, we all took a halftime. And we didn't do it because we were weak or we were lazy or we were ambivalent or we didn't care about winning. We cared a whole bunch about winning. And that was very strategic. We didn't keep running laps during halftime because we were dedicated. We rested because we cared so much about the outcomes. We were so dedicated to the game. We were so passionate about what we were doing. We were going to optimize to win.
Okay, I like the halftime idea. I mean, you've got people out, let's say on the court or on the field or whatnot, but you got half of them that are over on the sidelines sitting on a bench, and we go into halftime. Yeah, not so much to rest, but my thought was to regroup,
Yep.
to regroup.
Regroup, reimagine. Sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you don't have the creativity and the vision to reimagine a different outcome. And I've been at those games when you're losing the whole first half, and it's so easy to get stuck in that, like, we're not going to get ahead of this. There's no path forward, and you need that break. You need to step away. You need to regroup. You need to reimagine how the second half of this game can play out. And it's true in our lives. Sometimes we get stuck. We've been going in a certain direction, and we need to pause. We need to regroup, and we need to reimagine, how do we want the next decade of our life to play out? How can we shift this trajectory?
Again, I'm thinking of the halftime stuff. How many movies, how many of our epic movies or TV shows or whatever around sports teams, and the team that you're rooting for, or that's the focus of the show, is not doing well, and they go in and they get the pep talk, they get the whatever, and it turns things around, and they come back on the field and they make up for the lost ground and they win the game after regrouping. And yeah, why do we not do that? And we keep pushing forward. It kind of reminds me of the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Can we? Well, and this is a kind of a proactive way to do that, instead of waiting for what most of us do, for something to break and it causes the regroup. We get laid off, or we have a heart attack, or there is a divorce, or there is whatever. And then you're forced to. I have too many examples of that for me, that I did it when I was forced to. Now I'm looking and going, how can I do it proactively? But to say that, well, I guess the worst thing is if nothing ever happens and you just go along at half mast doing the grind forever and nothing changes. If For most people, often something will force it. But I think when that happens, you're not, well, how would you say it? You're not best, like a job. If you get laid off, maybe you'll find something different. We have a lot of people, it was the best thing that happened to me because I found a better job, but you still did it probably with urgency and not in the best frame of mind or with space, as if you had your day job, realizing you'd like to do something else, and slowly over time, take the space to figure out what you want to do next. So that's your proactive opportunity to regroup, until you either miss the opportunity to regroup or you're forced to, and it's not as strong of a position.
Yeah. There's this mental framework I have that 6 is the stickiest number. It's really easy to get stuck at a 6, where things are just okay. They're pretty good. It's not amazing. It's not an 8. It's not a 9. It's not a 10. And they're not horrible. It's not a 2 or a 3. It's just good enough. And in the moment, that's the stickiest spot. When your job is good enough, when your friendships are good enough, when your health is good enough, but it's not amazing. Um, and sometimes it takes life getting much, much worse for us to have that courage to change, because we don't have the capacity to suffer it too. That pushes us too far. And it too, that there's not a lot of downside, and there's so much more upside for change. And 6 feels okay in the moment. But I think when you hit 60 or 70 or 80 years old and you look back at your life and you go, yeah, my career it was a 6. It was okay. My relationships, yeah, there were maybe a 6. It was okay. My time with my kids, like, my whole life was just kind of okay. And that can be devastating. Devastating amounts of regret. That stuff was just, you had this one wild and precious life, and it was just kind of okay. And in many retirements, being that multi Swiss Army knife tool, it gives you that opportunity to take that thing that's a 6. And can we make it a 7? Can we make it an 8? Can we up level it and make it a 9? Whether that's our personal growth, whether that's our relationships, whether that's our hobbies and our interests or our sense of purpose, like, can we make these things that are just okay kind of amazing?
I have on that note seen, I don't know why, if there's a resurgence for some reason, but the book written by Bronnie Ware, The Five Regrets of the
Oh,
Dying.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just seeing it again. Maybe it's
Mm,
an anniversary of it. I think it's been around for a while, a decade or
yeah.
more. And most of those regrets were the things that they didn't do, not the things I regret being a jerk, something I did, but regret not doing. Back to I'm brought back as you talk there to courage though that you talked about, because I had a friend one time in a guy's group and talking about marriage relationships, and he says, "Yeah, I think I'm at a 6, let's say, in my marriage. Would you like to be at an 8 or 9?" Sure, but his fear was, will I have to disrupt things and drop down to a 3 in order to go up? And he says, I don't know that I'm willing to. And is that a line? Yeah,
Yeah, it's sticky. 6 is a
yeah.
tough spot. It can get much worse when you're at a 6, and there's not a huge amount of upside. And there's this quote by Elizabeth Gilbert. She said when she's really stuck, she has this prayer that like, God, please help make this better. But if you can't, please make it much, much worse. And I think that's if you're at a 6, like, it would be great if you could make it at an 8, but if you can't, just make it a 2, because then that's gonna give you that courage to change. Like, that's gonna shake things up because a 2 is not sustainable. And whenever I have, like, a coaching client that they're at, like, a 4 or 5 at their work, and I'm like, "Let's either make it better, let's make it much worse, because then we're gonna shake out of this, like, we're gonna get unstuck."
Gosh. Okay. Again, I like the analogy. My experience in my own life and with my friends, family, peers is that if we coast along at a 6, something will happen that will force us down to the 2. And I want to sit here and say, if I proactively do it, maybe I can take that 6 and only go to a 5, or maybe only a 4, and not, or at least prepare for it. And I think anything we do proactively, we tend to respond to better than when it's forced upon us. You mentioned fasting. I do that a lot and realize that if I choose to do a 72-hour fast, not that big a deal. Now, if you though put me in a room and don't give me food, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So this is the proactive. Obviously, we didn't get into the how to. So I want people, and I'll put this in the intro, to go through the book. It'll address all these questions. Yeah. What about this? What about money? What
Mm.
about work? And you address that. You've been doing this in your own life and with so many clients and people that you address all those, and actually go put your name into the podcast player. I bet somebody else is going to ask you about all those specifics, but I hit on the concepts because I'm just so interest myself with the mindset shifts
Yeah.
of this as a practice. And that's why you're here. And I dig it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Uh,
much for having me.
well, thanks for for connecting with me, and for my journal. That's a great muse as well. Um, for how I'm intentionally regrouping. I do like that word. Where am I taking my halftime, and where am I regrouping? So thanks for the time. Thanks for your insight and your thoughtfulness. I am honored to be a recipient of this myself, and also to put it out to, well, I was gonna say my audience, heck, my kids, as well. So Jillian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for joining us in this discussion. That again is Jillian Johnsrud. And the book is Retire Often: How Anyone Can Take Multiple Career Breaks to Unlock Adventure, Advance Their Career, and Find Financial Freedom. And you can find her wherever you're listening to this right now. Retire Often Podcast. Retire Often Podcast. Hey, till next time, here's to the evolving you.